Well, party leaders are under fire this week, not just for what they're doing, but also for what they're not doing during this election campaign. That's what we're going to talk about this week with our Wednesday Windsor Morning election panel. We welcome back our local insiders from the three parties. For the Liberals, Alicia Higgison is the vice president of the Riding Association in Windsor-Tecumseh-Lakeshore. She's also a Tecumseh Town councillor. For the NDP, we have Natyshak. He represented Essex as an MPP from 2011 to 2022. And for the Conservatives, we have Teshuba, a former candidate. He's now the vice president of the Riding Association in Windsor-West. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Well, Pierre Poilievre has faced criticism for not speaking out more strongly about Donald Trump and his influence on Canadian politics. Al, we're going to start with you. Some Conservatives have suggested your leader should have shifted his campaign and strategy more in response to the trade war. How do you feel about the direction the party campaign is going?
I think the direction's great because there's a great balance between reminding people what the last 10 years was about, which basically was things aren't affordable, a lot of red tape. Regular Canadians, working Canadians are struggling right now, and it can't just be only about let's just focus on the tariffs. That is important, obviously, especially Windsor as a border and a trade area. But as far as the bigger message is affordability, that's what people are really feeling throughout Canada. Actually, Pierre had a terrific interview with Brian Lilly. It was his very first question. And he said, listen, as far as Donald Trump, we're going to ask him to suspend the tariffs. Let's renegotiate CUSMA. Let's also add extra defense for Canada. Let's make sure that we're working together. And I think there will be a better trade deal. I mean, Trump already went on record saying he'd rather deal with the Liberals than the Conservatives. And the Conservatives will be the ones that will strengthen Canada with energy resources and so forth. I think everything will be fine. Just vote Conservative.
Alicia, what's your thoughts on how Pierre Poilievre has been running his campaign?
You know, it really speaks to kind of how you can shift and in the moment, even as a leader of a country, to how you can shift to the moment that Canadians are actually feeling. And I don't have any doubt that Canadians are feeling, I'm feeling it too, an affordability crisis. But I think what's more top of mind for people is the impact of the states that they're having on our affordability. And that is not only our affordability, but our literal sovereignty. And if you can't make that kind of shift to the moment, then it kind of speaks to some of that leadership. And I know that people have kind of hammered a little bit on Mark Carney for pausing his campaign and those kinds of things. But don't you want a guy who actually likes the job and wants to go and do the job? And leadership of a country doesn't pause for a campaign. And I think Canadians know this is a different kind of election. They know this is going to be a different kind of time for governing. They want a person who's going to respond to that. I think Mark Carney's done that.
Taras, how important is it for campaigns to pivot to the news of the day?
I think in today's day and age, it is more important than ever. News cycles change minute to minute, and campaigns have to be ready to adjust and to have talking points ready on the fly. So, as far as it relates to the Conservative campaign, I think the problem there is that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives have staked so much claim in trying to replicate the MAGA movement in Canada for years now. I mean, it's the talking points are similar. The emotions are similar. The divisiveness is very similar. So that has been planted in Canadians' minds, and it's really difficult to shake that once you've sort of staked your claim there and planted your flag. And knowing full well on the Conservative side that represents quite a substantial voting block for your party. So it's tough for them to pivot and abandon those talking points. It seems disingenuous and a little bit hypocritical.
Al, I want to give you a chance to respond to that. Do you feel we're in a Canadian MAGA movement?
We are in a Canada First movement. The United States was America First. It's totally different. We're for Canada. Well, we're for Canada. Okay. And that's not the United States. We are for Canada, which means let's unleash our energy resources. Let's unleash our abilities to sell LNG throughout the world. Let's lower taxes. Let's be more competitive. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we are for Canada. And the affordability crisis is really the cornerstone of the election prior to Donald Trump. The Conservative Party certainly has laid out policies on how to deal with trade and so forth. But this election, we cannot forget about the last 10 years. We've had the lowest GDP growth in 10 years compared to the G7. I mean, things have not been good under the Liberal NDP coalition government. So we need a change. We need to put Canada first for a change. And this is the major message for our supporters. And it was a great rally, by the way, on Friday, which all types of positive messages have been resonating for that. And people are ready for change. Let's look at the turnouts.
We're going to quickly turn to the Liberal leader, Mark Carney, now. This week, he has been called out for his silence rather than anything else he said. So both the Bloc Québécois and the Conservative leader says Carney is trying to take a free ride, that he's hiding by pausing his campaign and return to prime ministerial duties. Now, Alicia, you did touch on this a little bit, but what do you think? Is your leader being drawn away from the campaign trail too much?
I don't know if you can say that it's too much. I think if there's responses that we need to make in an ever shifting environment, then I'm expecting the guy at the top to take Canadians at heart and to actually do that job. And if it means that he has to pause his campaign in order to be able to do that, then that's the response that I would expect out of a leader. And I think that a campaign is not just the leader going place to place. You have local candidates. You have volunteers in all of these ridings that are bringing that message forward. And just because he has had to go back and do his actual job, I don't think should ever be a detriment to a leader. In fact, I think we're actually seeing what he would do as a leader, and I think that's part of what we're asking when we're voting for somebody.
Taras, do you think Mark Carney is getting a free ride?
I think he's taking full advantage of the dual positions that he holds right now, and that's fine. We saw Doug Ford do a similar thing during the provincial campaign. He had issues that he had to deal with, originating out of the United States, and there was some call it a distraction, but I mean there were some more pressing issues. So that's okay. But what I think is even maybe a little bit more concerning is dodging some of the history around Mark Carney and the serious questions that arise around what his motivations were in the private sector and how he used the rules to enrich either himself or supporters, and those are serious questions that raise concerns for people in terms of exposure and what their motivations would be going into a governing position. So those are hard-hitting questions. You have to hit them straight on. And those are questions that are open for every candidate and every leader that wants to hold this position.
Al, I want to give you a chance to expand on that. What questions do you think Carney needs to answer at this point?
Well, I agree with Taras. I mean, there's a lot unknown with Carney, where he files his taxes, how much taxes, why did you pull out of Canada, why did you go to New York? I mean, these are personal things, but aside from his personal portfolio or his private sector jobs, he was the advisor to Justin Trudeau for many years. So when you look at the policies that have hurt Canadians, that have taken away the affordability for Canadians, you look at Mark Carney as the advisor. And all they've done is taken the advisor that advised the former Trudeau and now made him leader. We really need a change. If you want real change, you can't have the same Liberal MPs, you can't have the same Liberal advisors, you can't have the same Liberal policies. And the Conservatives are the only one that will make the change for Canadians to have more affordability, to have greater success, greater prosperity, greater income for Canada, and by far be in the best position to renegotiate CUSMA and to negotiate with Donald Trump. You got to vote Conservative.
Alicia, are you satisfied with Mark Carney's answers to some of these questions or lack of answers?
I am satisfied. I also think it's really rich for people to be talking about how we want different kinds of candidates, and we want people to come in who are not career politicians. We want those kinds of leaders, and then when they come in with these kinds of backgrounds, we criticize everything that leads them here. I think he's made his position clear on it. I think he's given responses to some of the issues that people have had with his portfolio. I think he's done the right thing, and it's a story about how we kind of adjust to this new kind of political leadership, and it really is a stark contrast when you think about a Pierre Poilievre who has been a kind of lifetime politician, and then you have this guy that comes in and he's been a successful and sought after economist throughout the world, and I think you're going to have those dichotomous kind of positions, and I think this is what comes out of that.
I'm going to go to Jagmeet Singh now. The NDP leader has had to turn some of his attention to his own riding, as polls suggest he may have trouble holding on to his own seat. Taras, how vulnerable is your leader right now and your party nationally?
Well, it isn't rare for leaders to show some face during an election in their own riding. I think it's important to say hi to the people that sent you there. However, Jagmeet is crisscrossing the country. He is campaigning in the far north with candidates in Quebec, in the Atlantic provinces. He's everywhere that he needs to be to shore up the support for New Democrats across the country. There's no question that polls put us in a difficult position. We aren't the likely successors here. We aren't looking like we're going to take over the government without a real fight. However, what we are doing is reminding people what happens when you have New Democrats in the House of Commons. You get pharmacare, you get anti-scab legislation, you get protections for those things that make us Canadian, those fundamental pillars of our society here in Canada. And, we're reminding people, I think Jagmeet is doing a great job of exactly what it means to have an effective opposition. And that government really doesn't work if you don't have someone that's in there fighting for people who need the help the most.
Al, some people say that the Conservatives can take advantage of the NDP when they're stronger. How do you feel about Singh's leadership?
I mean, that's for the NDP to decide. We'll see how this plays out. If he's still even an MP at the end of it, he supported the Liberals until he got his pension, whether that was coincidental or just planned. The NDP Liberal coalition was how we got to this mess right now on affordability. There's a lot of distraction just because of Trump and the tariffs, but meanwhile it's out to tariffs for 60 countries. It turned out not to be as bad for Canada in retrospect. We do have the ability to actually improve our country. So I think the NDP will work their way out themselves, how it turns out, who might be the new leader and so forth if Jagmeet doesn't win. I'd rather focus on the new Conservative government and what they're going to do and how that's going to help Canadians and help Canada move forward. Statistically, obviously, the polling is such where the Conservatives are polling some of the highest ever, including Harper majority territory, but it does require a Liberal split, so to speak, with the NDP to balance that out. We're going to see what happens with the debates in the next 2 days, where Canadians really are going to start paying attention more and how it works out at the end and how that splits the vote. But the Conservative base is so rock solid and growing, and the momentum is incredible. That's what I would focus on, because I think we're going to form the next government.
Alicia, how do you think the Liberals can take advantage of the NDP's vulnerability right now?
I think Canadians are going to decide how what their country should look like, and I think they're telling us in the polls right now that this is looking like a two-way race, and whether that looks like having a balance with NDPs in the House, I guess we'll see. What I think the NDP really run the risk of at this point is losing official party status, and that means that their members that are in the House have a tougher time making the case and having that voice that they've had in the House. And I think that's something for the NDP to kind of decide for themselves how they're going to deal with. And I think Liberals have an obligation to bring our message out and to actually tell people why they should vote for us and not just not vote for the NDP.
Tonight is the kickoff of one of two debates. We're going to hear the French debate tonight, the English tomorrow. I'm going to give you each a minute to tell us what you feel your leaders need to do in these debates to win. Al, let's start with you. What do you need to hear from the leader tonight?
Well, I think we're going to hear that being in Parliament for 20 years, knowing the ins and outs of the rules, legislation, the history, the past, what's worked, what's not worked, knowing the other politicians in the United States, being able to have that relationship and try to make better deals for Canada, better relations for Canada is by far the best resume a leader can have to be Prime Minister. We want somebody with that background and that knowledge and the ability to do so. That, I think, will be pointed out on top of reminding people that the lost decade of the Liberals with the NDP supporting them is the reason why we're in the position the way we are. And I think Pierre is going to do a great job talking about how we will improve Canada with a Conservative government, make things more affordable, build the homes, and be able to have better trade deals and to better sell our resources, getting rid of ridiculous constraining policies like C-69, stopping the pipelines, energy, being able to sell our LNG across the world. I mean, these are things that people need to understand, that Canada could be so much more prosperous with a Conservative government. And I think he's going to show that he's the real leader to make that happen.
Alicia, what do you want Mark Carney to get across tonight?
I want to hear about how he's going to make our economy work for us, and I think work is the main thing. I think he's got to talk about how what it's going to take to build Canada's jobs and how he's going to actually be able to allow people the ability to upskill and to kind of get rid of interprovincial trade barriers, those sorts of things that we actually need to do to allow people to prosper and to allow Canada to actually foster itself internally. And I think we want to hear how it's really interesting to hear that what Canadians want is a career politician. I don't think that's true. I think people want to actually, I think what they actually want is somebody who's been in the trenches and who's had to kind of make payroll and do all those things, and to kind of create change in multiple sectors. I think people really want to hear what that's going to look like for Canada. That is different, and that is something that is going to be new for Canadians. And I think they're interested in what he has to say. And I think as well as he can get that point across of what he's been doing as leader and as Prime Minister, and what he's going to continue to be able to do with those relationships that he's built across the world.
Taras, what do you want to hear from the NDP leader?
I think what we will hear from Jagmeet is what we've heard for many years is his deep ability to connect with voters in Quebec, particularly. His grasp of the French language is quite good, and his ability to evoke the sentiments that Quebecers feel quite passionately: the protection of the environment, the protection of language rights, their unique position in Confederation, and the need for someone to stand there to protect those. I think Jagmeet has that ability to be authentic and to relate to Quebecers in a way that is really important during elections. It's often said that if you can win Quebec, or if you can garner real support in Quebec, then you're way ahead of the game in terms of being able to be successful in a federal election. So we knew that was important with the campaigns with Tom Mulcair as a leader. Jack Layton certainly had a lot of impact in Quebec, and we'll look to Jagmeet to replicate some of that effect.
All right. Thank you so much for coming in today. The time flies when you're in here. Now, Taras Natyshak with the NDP, Alicia Higgison with the Liberals, and Al Teshuba with the Conservatives. They'll be back again with us next Wednesday at this time for the final pre-election day panel discussion.